The child stopped crying on the third day. That was when Danny Reeves knew they were running out of time, that he watched the little Lethani girl sit quietly beside her grandmother in the medical bay. Her blue-green skin had turned pale. Her large eyes, usually bright with curiosity, now stared at nothing. She had no more tears left because her body was saving every drop of water it could. The passenger ship Gentle Horizon had been drifting through the Corval Nebula for 3 days now. The engine failure had been sudden and violent. It killed 11 crew members instantly. It also destroyed something far more important than the engines. The food synthesizers were gone. 847 passengers from 12 different species were now trapped in a metal box floating through space. They had air. They had water. They had working lights and beds and bathrooms. But they had nothing to eat. Danny walked through the corridors and saw fear everywhere. A group of Dorvathy huddled together, their 6 limbs wrapped around each other for comfort. Their massive bodies needed more food than most species, and they were already growing weak. A pair of Avishans, delicate bird-like beings, whispered to each other with shaking voices. Their hollow bones and fast heartbeats meant they would starve faster than anyone else. The navigator, a tall Avishan named Perel, had made an announcement that morning. A rescue signal had been sent. Help was coming, but the nearest ship was 18 days away. Maybe 22 if conditions were bad. And O1 said what everyone was thinking. Most of them would be dead in 18 days. Danny found Perel in her command room, staring at star charts with empty eyes. She looked up when he entered, and for a moment, hope flickered across her face. Then she saw it was just the human cargo handler, and the hope died. "Can I help you, Mr. Reeves?" she asked. "I need access to the cargo bay," Danny said, "and permission to use the emergency shuttle." Perel tilted her head, a gesture of confusion among her people. "For what purpose? There's a moon about 4 hours from here. Ave Septine. The scanners show life signs. Plants, animals, water." Danny paused. Food. Understanding spread across Perel's features, followed immediately by disgust. Her feathers rose along her neck, a sign of deep discomfort. "You want to hunt," she said. "I want to keep everyone alive." "Absolutely not." Perel stood from her chair, drawing herself up to her full height. "The Sentient Provisions Act is very clear. Hunting, trapping, and consumption of non-synthesized organic matter is forbidden throughout Council space. It is barbaric. It is primitive. It is everything civilized species have moved beyond." Danny kept his voice calm. "With respect, Navigator, civilized species are going to start dying in about 6 days. The children first, then the elderly, then everyone else. The law exists for good reason," Perel said, but her voice wavered slightly. "Today you hunt animals. Tomorrow, when the animals run out, what then? Do you hunt the weakest passengers? The Avishans? The Lethani children? That is not who we are. Every species believes that until hunger makes them into something else." Perel shook her head. "I am sorry, Mr. Reeves. I cannot allow it. We will wait for rescue like civilized beings." Danny looked at her for a long moment. He thought about arguing. He thought about explaining that humans had hunted for 200,000 years before they ever saw a synthesizer. That his grandfather had taught him to track deer through Canadian forests when he was barely old enough to walk. That there was a code, a way of taking life with respect and gratitude and purpose, but he could see that Perel would not understand. Her species had evolved past predation millions of years ago. To her, hunting was not survival. It was murder. "I understand," Danny said quietly. He turned and left. Back in his small cabin, Danny opened a case he had kept hidden beneath his bed. Inside was a knife that had belonged to his grandfather. The handle was worn smooth from generations of use. The blade was still sharp enough to split a hair. He held it in his hands and remembered the first time he had killed a rabbit caught in a snare. His grandfather had shown him how to end its life quickly, painlessly. Then they had sat together and spoken words of thanks to the animal that would feed them. "We do not kill for sport," his grandfather had told him. "We kill because life requires death, and we never waste what dies for us." A knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. He opened it to find Counselor Bryn, a massive Dorothy with kind eyes, standing in the hallway. I heard about your conversation with the navigator, Bryn said quietly. May I come in? Danny stepped aside. Bryn looked at the knife in Danny's hands. Unlike Perel, there was no disgust in the counselor's eyes, only curiosity and something that might have been hope. Tell me about your people, Bryn said. Tell me how humans survived before the stars. That night, a Dorothy child collapsed in a medical bay. The doctor said she had perhaps 5 days left. Danny began to sharpen his knife. Counselor Bryn had never seen a predator up close. Not a real one. That the Dorothy had evolved on a peaceful world where the largest danger was falling from a tree. They had 6 limbs for climbing and soft bodies built for gathering fruit. The idea of one creature killing another for food existed only in their oldest stories, tales told to frighten children. Now Bryn sat in Danny Reeves' small cabin and watched the human explain things that should have been impossible. We were not always at the top, Danny said. He spoke slowly, choosing simple words. Long ago, other animals hunted us. We were small, weak, easy prey. But we learned. We watched the predators, and we became like them, better than them. How? Bryn asked. The question came from deep curiosity, not judgment. Patience, endurance, tools. Danny held up his knife. A human cannot outrun a deer, but a human can follow that deer for days, never stopping, until the deer collapses from exhaustion. We're the only species on our world that hunts this way. Bryn shuddered. The image was terrifying. A creature that never stopped following, never gave up, never let its prey rest. And you did this for how long? 200,000 years. Maybe longer. Danny set the knife down. Every human alive today carries those instincts. We have simply chosen not to use them. But the knowledge is still there, passed from parent to child. Bryn was quiet for a long moment. Then the counselor spoke carefully. I cannot support what you plan to do, but I understand why you must do it. I will not report you to Navigator Perel. Danny nodded. Thank you. There is one thing I do not understand, Bryn said. You say humans chose to stop hunting. Why? If you were so successful, why change? Danny smiled, but there was sadness in it. Because we also learned something else. We learned that killing has a weight. Every life we took left a mark on us. We developed rituals, prayers, ways of honoring what died so we could live. And eventually, we found ways to eat without killing at all. He paused, but we never forgot how. We never could. The next day, Danny found 2 others willing to help. The first was Specialist Howell, another human who worked in engineering. She was a small woman with quick hands and a practical mind. When Danny explained his plan, she did not hesitate. I can modify the shuttle's cargo hold, she said. Turn it into a refrigeration unit. Whatever you bring back, I can keep it fresh. The second volunteer surprised Danny. His name was Moss, a Grecian scientist who specialized in plants. Grecians were tall, thin beings with bark-like skin. They did not eat meat themselves, but Moss had studied biology across 100 worlds. I can help you identify safe foods, Moss said. Plants, fruits, anything that will not poison the other species. I cannot hunt with you, but I can make sure what you bring back will not kill anyone. Danny accepted both offers gratefully. That night, the 3 of them studied scanner data from KV-7. The moon was covered in thick forests, rivers, and open plains. Life was everywhere. Large grazing animals moved in herds across the grasslands. Smaller creatures darted through the trees. The water was full of fish. It is like Earth, Danny said quietly, before we covered it with cities. The shuttle has no weapons, Howell reported. Galactic law forbids weapons on passenger transports. You will have nothing but that knife. That is enough. Moss looked uncomfortable. The animals there have never seen a predator like you. They will not know to be afraid. I know. Danny's voice was heavy. I will make it quick. I will make it clean. And I will use everything they give us. On the 5th day, Navigator Perel made another announcement. Water rationing would continue. Passengers were advised to rest and conserve energy. Help was coming. She did not mention that 2 more children had collapsed. She did not mention that the medical bay was running out of nutrient supplements. She did not mention that some passengers had begun looking at each other with hungry, desperate eyes. Danny waited until the night shift, when fewer crew members were watching the shuttle bay. Howell had already prepared the small craft. Moss had loaded it with containers for collecting plants and water. Danny carried only his knife, a length of rope, and the knowledge his grandfather had given him as he climbed into the shuttle. He paused. Bryn was standing in the shadows of the bay, watching. "I will pray for you," the counselor said. "I do not know to what god a predator prays, but I will try." Danny smiled. "Pray for the animals I am about to meet. They are the ones who will need it." The shuttle lifted off and slipped quietly into the darkness between stars. Behind him, 846 hungry souls waited to see if a single human with a knife could do what 200,000 years of evolution had prepared him to do. The hunt was beginning. The air tasted like rain and green growing things. Danny stood at the edge of a forest that had never known human footsteps. The trees rose tall above him, their leaves a deep purple instead of green. A river moved slowly through the valley below, its water clear and cold. Somewhere in the distance, animals called to each other in voices that sounded almost like music. For a moment, he simply breathed. This was what Earth must have looked like once, before cities and roads and the endless spread of civilization. Wild, pure, untouched. Then he pushed the feeling aside. He was not here to admire. He was here to hunt. Danny moved into the forest slowly, placing each foot with care. His grandfather had taught him that the forest has ears. Every broken branch, every crushed leaf, every careless step sent a message to everything nearby. A good hunter was silent. A good hunter was patient. A good hunter became part of the forest itself. That he found a game trail within an hour. The ground was pressed flat by countless hooves. Droppings told him that large grazers passed this way regularly, probably heading to the river to drink. He followed the trail until he found a narrow spot between two large trees. This was where he would set his first snare. Danny worked quickly, using the rope he had brought. His grandfather had shown him this design when he was 12 years old. It was simple but effective. An animal would step into the loop, its own weight would pull the rope tight, and it would be held until the hunter returned. He set 3 more snares along different trails, then moved toward the river. The fish were easy to spot. They swam in schools, their silver scales flashing in the sunlight that filtered through the trees. Danny waded into the shallows and stood perfectly still. Minutes passed. The fish grew used to his presence. They began to swim closer, curious about this strange new rock that had appeared in their river. When one passed close enough, Danny's hand shot into the water. His fingers closed around the slippery body. He threw the fish onto the bank before it could escape. Again and again, he repeated this. It was slow work, but soon he had a pile of fish waiting to be cleaned. As the sun moved across the sky, Danny checked his snares. 2 were empty. One had been triggered, but the animal had escaped. The 4th held a creature that looked like a rabbit with 6 legs and soft gray fur. Danny knelt beside it. The animal was alive, its eyes wide with fear, its heart beating so fast he could see its chest moving. "I am sorry," he said quietly. The words felt strange in this alien forest, but they were the words his grandfather had always spoken. "Your life will feed others. I will not waste what you give." His knife was quick. The animal did not suffer. Danny cleaned it carefully, saving the meat, the organs, even the fur. Nothing would be wasted. That was the code. By late afternoon, he had gathered enough food for perhaps 50 meals. Fish, small game, roots and fruits that Moss had confirmed were safe through the communicator. It was not enough. Not nearly enough for 800 people. But it was a start. He was preparing to return to the shuttle when he heard them. Footsteps. Heavy ones. Many of them. Danny froze and looked toward the sound. Through the trees, he saw them coming. 6 animals, each the size of a horse, with thick bodies and long, curved horns. They walked in a line, heading toward the river to drink, grazers. The large ones he had seen on the scanner. Each one could feed 100 people. Danny's heart began to beat faster. This was different from snares and fishing. This was real hunting. The kind his ancestors had done on the plains of Africa, the forests of Europe, the frozen north of Canada. He moved silently through the trees, circling around the herd. He watched how they walked, which one was oldest, which one was slowest. An old female at the back of the group moved with a slight limp. She was his target. Danny waited until the herd reached the river and began to drink. Then he moved that he ran straight at them, shouting. The herd panicked and fled, just as he knew they would. But the old female was slow. She fell behind. Danny did not try to catch her. He simply followed. He jogged at a steady pace, never sprinting, never stopping. The female tried to run, but every time she slowed down to rest, there he was. Always behind her. Always coming. This was persistence hunting, the oldest technique of his species. After 2 hours, the female could run no more. She stood with her legs shaking, her breath coming in great gasps. Danny approached slowly. "Thank you," he said. "Your herd will survive. Your death will save many lives. One strike, quick and clean." She fell without a sound. Danny worked until darkness began to fall, cutting the meat into portions he could carry, saving everything useful. When he finally loaded the shuttle, the cargo hold was full. He flew back toward the general horizon with enough food to last 3 days. That IT was only the beginning. 12 security officers were waiting when Danny opened the cargo bay doors. Navigator Perel stood at their center, her feathers raised in anger, her eyes burning with a fury that seemed almost personal. Behind her, passengers had gathered to watch. Word had spread quickly that the human had returned with something in his shuttle. "Danny Reeves," Perel said, her voice cold and formal. "You are under arrest for violation of the Sentient Provisions Act. You will surrender yourself immediately." Danny stepped down from the shuttle slowly. He did not resist when 2 officers took his arms. He simply looked at Perel and said, "There is enough food in that shuttle to keep everyone alive for 3 days. I suggest you distribute it before it spoils." Perel did not respond. She turned and walked away, and the officers followed, dragging Danny with them. They held the trial in the main assembly hall. It was not a real courtroom, but Perel had arranged chairs and tables to make it look like one. Danny sat alone at a table, facing her. Behind him, hundreds of passengers watched in silence. "The charges are clear," Perel began. "This human violated the most basic law of civilized society. He hunted. He killed. He brought the flesh of dead animals onto this ship with the intention of feeding it to passengers." She paused. "This is not merely illegal. It is an offense against everything we have built as a galactic community." Danny listened without expression. "The defendant may speak," Perel said. Danny stood slowly. He looked not at Perel, but at the passengers behind him. He saw Dorvathy mothers holding their weakened children. He saw elderly Avishans who had accepted death. He saw young Yessie, the Lethani girl, sitting beside her grandmother with hollow eyes. "I killed today," Danny said. "I took the lives of animals that had done nothing wrong. I ended their existence so that we could continue ours." He paused. "I'm not proud of it, but I'm not ashamed either." Murmurs spread through the crowd. "The law says I'm a criminal," Danny continued. "The law says that what I did was barbaric, primitive, wrong. And maybe the law is right. But I ask you this, what is the purpose of law? Is it to protect life or to end it?" Perel stood. "The law exists to keep us civilized. Without it, we become animals ourselves." "We are animals," Danny said quietly. "All of us. We eat, we breathe, we struggle to survive. The only difference between us and the creatures I hunted today is that we have learned to pretend otherwise." He turned to face Perel directly. "You can arrest me. You can punish me. But in 18 days, when the rescue ship arrives, will anyone be left to see it?" Silence filled the hall. Then a voice spoke from the crowd. It was Counselor Bryn, rising slowly to her full height. "I would like to speak for the defense," Bryn said, "if the court allows it." Perel hesitated, then nodded. Bryn walked to the front of the hall. "I have studied many species in my life. I have learned their histories, their philosophies, their beliefs. And I have never encountered a species quite like humans." She paused. "They are predators. This is true. but they are predators who chose to become something else. They developed laws, ethics, morality. They stopped killing not because they could not, but because they believed it was wrong. She turned to face the crowd. Danny Reeves did not hunt today because he wanted to. He hunted because 847 lives depended on it. He took on a burden that none of us could carry. He became something terrible so that we could remain innocent. Young Yessie stood suddenly. Her voice was small but clear. I do not want my grandmother to die. I do not care where the food comes from. One by one, others stood. The Dorvathy mother with her sick child. An elderly Grecian who had seen too much death already. A young Avashan who had been crying for days. Enough, Perel said. Her voice shook. This is not how justice works. We cannot simply vote on whether to ignore the law. Then let us vote on survival, Bryn said. All those who believe Danny Reeves should be released to continue his work stand now. The room rose. Every passenger, every species, every frightened soul who wanted to live. Even some of Perel's own security officers stood. Perel looked at them all. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, slowly, she sat down. Release him, she whispered. Danny walked back to the shuttle bay with Bryn at his side. Behind them, passengers were already beginning to distribute the food he had brought. What happens now? Bryn asked. Danny looked at the shuttle. Now I go back, again and again, until rescue arrives or until there is nothing left to hunt. Can you do it alone? Danny shook his head. No, I will need help. Volunteers to gather plants, to process meat, to carry supplies. He paused. I will need to teach them the old ways. Bryn placed one of her 6 hands on Danny's shoulder. Then teach us, human. Show us how your ancestors survived. Danny picked up his knife. It will not be easy, and none of you will ever see food the same way again. Perhaps that is not a bad thing, Bryn said softly. The hunt would continue. The first communal meal was eaten in complete silence. Danny watched from the corner of the dining hall as passengers stared at the food on their plates. Fish cooked simply over heating units. Vegetables gathered from the forest floor. Meat from the grazer he had hunted, cut into small portions and roasted until it was tender. And Owen moved. A young Avashan looked at her plate and began to cry softly. An elderly Dorvathy pushed his food away and closed his eyes. Even the species who had once eaten natural food, millions of years ago in their evolutionary past, could not bring themselves to take the first bite. Danny understood. He remembered the first time he had eaten something his grandfather had killed. The strange feeling of knowing that this food had once been alive, had once breathed and moved and wanted to live. It had taken him years to make peace with that knowledge. These passengers had hours, not years. Then Yessie's grandmother picked up her fork. The old Lethani woman was thin and weak, her blue-green skin almost gray from hunger. She looked at the fish on her plate for a long moment. When I was very young, she said, her voice carrying through the silent hall, my grandmother told me stories of the old times. Before synthesizers, before we forgot where food came from. She lifted a piece of fish to her mouth. I thought they were just stories. She ate. The room held its breath. The old woman chewed slowly, swallowed, and then took another bite. It is good, she said simply. It tastes like life. One by one, others began to eat. Some cried while they did it. Some could only manage a few bites before they had to stop. But they ate. Over the next 12 days, Danny returned to KV-7 again and again. Each trip, he brought volunteers with him. Moss taught groups of passengers how to identify safe plants. They learned to dig for roots, to pick fruits without damaging the trees, to gather enough vegetation to supplement the meat Danny provided. Howell trained others to process what Danny brought back. They learned to clean fish, to preserve meat, to waste nothing. It was hard, messy work that left many of them shaking and pale. But they did it because the alternative was death. Danny himself taught the hardest lessons. Hunting is not about killing, he told a group of volunteers on the surface of KV-7. Killing is only the end. Hunting is about understanding. You must know the animal better than it knows itself. Where it sleeps, where it drinks, what it fears. A young Dorvathy named Kel listened with wide eyes. How can you know so much about creatures you have never seen before? Because all animals are the same in some ways, Danny said. They want to eat. They want to drink. They want to be safe. They want to protect their young. If you understand these things, you understand them. On the 11th day, something went wrong. The gathering party was collecting plants near the forest edge when a large grazer charged out of the trees. It was a male, massive and angry, defending territory that the party had wandered into without knowing. The Dorothy volunteer did not have time to run. The grazer's horns caught him in the side and threw him 10 feet through the air. Danny heard the screams from across the valley. He ran faster than he had ever run in his life, his knife in his hand. The grazer was standing over the fallen Dorothy, preparing to strike again. Danny shouted, drawing its attention. The animal turned and charged at him instead. Danny did not run. He waited the last moment. He stepped aside and brought his knife across the animal's throat in one smooth motion. The grazer crashed to the ground and did not rise. The Dorothy volunteer survived. His injuries were serious, but not fatal. Back on the ship, Danny addressed the passengers who had heard about the attack. Nature is not gentle, he said. The universe does not care about our laws or our comfort. It does not owe us safety. It does not owe us survival. He paused. But my ancestors learned something important. They learned that they could face the darkness and still remain good. They could kill to survive and still feel the weight of every death. They could be predators and still have souls. On the 17th day, the rescue ship appeared on long-range sensors. The Bright Covenant, a medical vessel that had pushed its engines to the limit to reach them 2 more days until salvation. That night, Danny sat alone in the shuttle bay. He was exhausted in ways he could not describe. His hands were rough from work. His dreams were filled with the eyes of animals he had killed. Counselor Bryn found him there. "You have saved us all," Bryn said quietly. "Every soul on this ship owes you their life." Danny shook his head. "I just did what my ancestors did. What humans have always done when survival demanded it." "And what is that?" Danny looked at his hands, the hands that had taken so many lives over the past 2 weeks. "We became monsters so others did not have to. And then we carried that weight alone." Bryn sat beside him. "You do not have to carry it alone. Not anymore." For the first time in many days, Danny smiled. "Thank you," he said. "That helps more than you know." The rescue captain could not believe what she was seeing. 847 passengers stood in the docking bay of the Gentle Horizon, alive and healthy. Captain Vera had prepared her medical teams for mass casualties. She had expected to find corpses. She had expected grief and despair and the hollow eyes of survivors who had watched their friends die. Instead, she found people standing together. Different species, different worlds, different bodies, all united by something she did not understand. "How is this possible?" she asked Navigator Perel. "Our reports said your food systems were completely destroyed. You should have lost at least half your passengers by now." Perel looked uncomfortable. "We had help." "What kind of help?" "The humankind." When Vera learned the truth, she did not know how to react. The Sentient Provisions Act was one of the oldest laws in Council space. Hunting was forbidden. Trapping was forbidden. Eating non-synthesized meat was forbidden. These rules had kept peace between predator and prey species for thousands of years, and one human cargo handler had broken every single one of them. "I have to file a report," Vera said. "You understand that. He will face charges." Perel nodded slowly. Then she said something that surprised even herself. "I request that you note my formal objection to any punishment. Danny Reeves saved every soul on this vessel. Without him, we would all be dead. Navigator, you were the one who initially had him arrested." "I was wrong." Before Vera could respond, other passengers began to approach. A Dorothy mother holding her child, an elderly Avashan couple, a young Grecian scientist. One by one, they came to speak for the human who had hunted for them. The last to approach was a small Lethani girl named Yessie. She held a piece of paper in her hands, a drawing she had made with supplies from the medical bay. "I made this for Mr. Danny," she said, holding it up. The drawing showed a simple figure, a human standing with arms spread wide. Behind him stood a group of different shapes, different species, all huddled together. In front of him was darkness, a great empty void with hungry eyes. The human stood between the monsters and the people he protected. Vera took the drawing and looked at it for a long time. Then she sighed. "Charges will be filed," she said, "but I will recommend immediate suspension pending review. He will not face prison." She paused. "I cannot promise more than that." "Thank you," Perel said quietly. Danny was in the medical bay when they came to tell him. He had been there for hours, helping treat the Dorvathy volunteer who had been injured by the grazer. His hands were steady as he worked, but his eyes were tired. "You are free to go," Vera told him. "For now." Danny nodded. He did not seem surprised or relieved. He simply stood up and walked toward the door. Bryn was waiting in the corridor. "How do you feel?" "Tired," Danny admitted. "I have not slept properly in 18 days. "That is not what I meant." Danny was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I feel like my grandfather would be proud. He always told me that the hunt was not about killing. It was about responsibility, about taking on a burden that others could not carry." "Do you regret anything?" "I regret every life I took." Danny's voice was soft but firm. "I will carry them with me forever. But I do not regret that the people on this ship are alive. That is worth the wait." On the last day, before the passengers transferred to the Bright Covenant, they gathered one more time in the dining hall of the Gentle Horizon. Food from the synthesizers on the rescue ship had been brought over. Clean, safe, civilized food that had never been alive. But before anyone ate, they paused. Counselor Bryn stood at the front of the room. "I would like to say something," she announced. "In my culture, we have a tradition. Before we eat, we give thanks to those who made our food possible." She turned to look at Danny, who was standing quietly in the back of the room. "Today, I give thanks to a human, a predator who chose to become our protector, a hunter who fed us when we could not feed ourselves, a man who carried darkness so that we could remain in the light." The room was silent. Then, one by one, passengers began to bow their heads. Dorvathy, Avishans, Grethians, Lithanes, all of them giving thanks in the manner of their own cultures. Danny bowed his head in return. After the meal, Bryn found Danny standing by a window, looking out at the stars. "What will you do now?" she asked. "Go home, I suppose. Face whatever charges they bring. Try to remember how to live a normal life." Bryn was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, "Do humans miss it?" "The old ways. Hunting and gathering and living close to the wild." Danny looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, the world his ancestors had once roamed as hunters and gatherers. A world of forests and rivers and animals that had taught his people how to survive. "Every single day," he said softly, "we dream about open skies and endless forests. We feel the pull of something ancient in our blood. We have never stopped being hunters." He paused. "We have simply learned to hunt for other things. Knowledge, justice, peace. And when those things fail," Danny smiled, and for a moment, Bryn saw something old and dangerous in his eyes, something that had kept humanity alive for 200,000 years. "Then we remember," he said, "and we survive."